So I know this kid who is half white and half Filipino. Many of the people in her life, whether it be the people she is surrounded by, such as at school or even her own family members, have told her that she doesn't understand what it's like to truly be Filipino. Being half white and half Filipino, while also being born and raised in America, means she doesn't understand the struggles of being a person of color. They have said things to her like, things are so much easier for you because you're half white. Not being able to understand what it's like being the odd one out in a room or being discriminated against for her ethnicity. She has the complexion of freedom because she is paler than most people in her family. Her family has made Filipino jokes, but she often is. There have been times when her family has made Filipino jokes, but they often disapproved of her making jokes about her own culture because she is only half Filipino. But it's not just her Filipino side of the family that affects her. She has heard things from her peers like, all white people are racist, as if her being half white makes her more prone to being racist. Or every Filipino becomes a nurse. Every day, she is being constantly pressured to become a nurse, or else she will never be successful in life. And in a way, she does want to become a nurse. But is that what she really wants, or is she just saying that because that's what her family wants? She experiences the stereotypes of being of both her ethnicities and being a mixed child. It's a constant cycle of being not Filipino enough or not white enough, or too white and not Filipino enough, or vice versa. Just not being enough. And I understand these problems. You know why? Because it's me, I'm her. I was born in North Carolina, and I lived there until 2010, and the majority of people there were white, and there was not a lot of diversity. My mom, brother, and I were the only people of color in our community. As a Filipino woman, my mother had her fair share of discrimination, but a significant time was after she gave birth to me in the hospital. My mother was never able to give me the name she wanted. I was supposed to be named Angelica Lauren Graybeal. But of course, that's not much different than Angelica Graybeal. However, it is a Filipino tradition to give your child more than one first name. And that is why, folks, Filipino names are so dang long. The hospital never allowed my mother to name me, my Filipino mother, but they allowed my white father to do so. My mom tried to add the second first name to honor her Filipino heritage, but the people in charge of her birth certificate wouldn't let her, and instead proceeded to tell her, "You can name your next child." In 2015, 1 in 7 US infants were multi-ethnic or multicultural. That's about 14% of the US population, and the numbers still continue to grow. Imagine how many mixed children make up America right now, because that was only 2015. Imagine how many mixed individuals are in this room right now. When I moved to California in 2010, it really opened my eyes because there were a lot of kids here who were just like me. And it was amazing because I was often surrounded by Filipino kids and mixed kids. And a lot of these kids understood the same exact struggles that I went through. A lot of these struggles were things even our own parents couldn't understand and didn't know that we experienced on a daily basis. There is this idea of being too blank or not blank enough, too white, not black enough, not really Mexican, so Asian. These are things that mixed children often hear on a daily basis. With multiple ethnicities, mixed children often experience a constant push and pull between their cultures and try to structure their identity in a way society finds acceptable. But this is almost impossible. We don't fit those stereotypical molds that exist in society, so we try to navigate multiple paths at the same time. Sometimes, even I don't feel Filipino enough, and sometimes not white enough. I've even been told, but you're not really Filipino, when I tell them I'm only half. I remember taking a standardized test, and you know how they have that little box of just like a list of races? Well, it required me to choose only one race for myself. And oh my God, I just sat there in my chair for a good 7 minutes just staring at my paper like, even I don't know, you tell me. It was like I was being forced to erase one part of my identity and choose only one half of it. And I was. Mixed children may not necessarily look like what you may assume, and people create assumptions based off of their last name, when they see their face, when they see their skin tone, when they meet only one of their parents, and even when they hear their voice. So mixed children can often be asked the questions, what are you? What kind of Asian are you? Or, my personal favorite, do you speak Tagalongs just like the Girl Scout cookies? Their identities are not small talk, tokens, or curiosities, and not everyone understands what their identities and backgrounds mean to them. But when you do ask the question, do not expect an easy answer, because we defy expectation. We do not owe you anything. Around the world, being white is considered beautiful, even here in America. Skin lightening soap is often used to achieve a whiter skin tone. Companies whitewash people. I've seen companies whitewash people around the world because I've seen people in advertisements with much whiter skin than they actually do in real life because their companies whitewash them to make them seem more attractive. Filipinos, as well as other people of color, have adopted feelings of being inferior from comparing themselves to their rulers' dominating white standards. This is called the colonial mentality. The Americans and Spaniards that have colonized the Philippines for all these centuries have made sure to exercise one idea into the many mentalities of Filipinos. And that idea is that white rules, literally. Parents of those who have a multicultural identity may speak two different languages. And this can cause their children to mix words from these two languages together. And people often get confused on what they're talking about. At home, some of them may speak one language, such as their native language, to their family. And outside of their house, they may speak another. Language mixing is very common in interactions between bilingual parents and their children. About 90% of parents mix languages when communicating with their children. And this is totally normal. Bilingual kids use the vocabulary they have to express themselves, and this should not be viewed as a negative thing that will later on confuse children when they're learning multiple languages. Before, when I was asked what ethnicity I am, I have grown into the habit of only saying Filipino. And I forget to say that I'm also half Caucasian, because I'm afraid that if someone finds out that I am half white or I am a mixed child, their perspective of me would change. I've faced I've faced the difficulties of fitting into Filipino and or American culture. And this applies to individuals of other ethnicities as well. Filipino individuals who were born and raised in the Philippines don't expect American children to be cognizant of the Filipino culture and are often surprised when they exhibit a strong understanding of the Tagalog language or other traditional aspects. On top of that, they believe things are so much easier for mixed children who are half white because they're half Caucasian, meaning they're more privileged and they experience less racism. However, this is never the case because society makes it difficult for mixed people to live as one person. So what can be done? What must we understand and keep in mind? It is important to understand that stereotypes do not always apply to everyone, and that a specific racial group shouldn't be forced to fit into a certain expectation or mold. We mustn't allow these things to taint our views of someone just because of who they are. Mixed people are so much more than just their ethnicities, so don't expect them to be something they may not be. It is also good to note that mixed children are not proof that racism is over. Mixed children still experience racism just as much as people that identify with a single ethnicity do. Being mixed does not lessen your chance of experiencing racism in America, and it does not cause you to understand your culture any less. Also, don't use fractions, because using fractions can cause people, like children, to feel like that they can't engage as much as they want to in their culture just because they're not enough of a specific race. You don't have to try to fit in with one piece of yourself. You should understand yourself for who you are. Your multicultural/multi-ethnic identity does not define you. You define yourself because it's only one piece of your identity. Engaging in culture is also an important factor. Introducing children to their culture while also being actually involved and engaged in it with them will actually help them develop a racial identity. And it's crucial to be intentional about toys, books, and media. Parents, you can even stock up on crayons that fit a range of skin tones and fill your shelves with videos, books, and toys that depict a diverse family. Children with a multiracial background gives them a greater appreciation for diversity and the ability to understand many different sides of controversial topics. If these things were done for me when I was younger, I wouldn't have been so conscious of what I told people when they asked what ethnicity I am. For future kids, they will be able to grow up comfortable with their cultural background and have a better understanding of who they are. So, let's close the gap between both worlds. Thank you.